pleasure to speak to you all today. I've got 15 minutes, so I'm going to move through this really quite quickly. But if you have any questions at all, please share them with me. I'm really happy to do that. So what I'd like to do first of all is to kind of conduct a thought experiment with you. What's the first thing you feel when you see this? When this pops up onto your phone or onto your mobile device, what's the first thing that you actually think or feel? Or perhaps when you see something like this. More often than not, even if we're really in the middle of something that demands our attention, like being with our loved ones or being with a colleague that we have to be with, or even if we're in the middle of a piece of work or even driving our cars, something that demands our attention, we feel compelled. Oh, stop my video. We feel absolutely compelled to do this. We feel absolutely compelled to look at these notifications, and it's absolutely no accident that we do this, because these notifications are designed to stir our emotions, capture our attention in such a way as Tristan Harris, who was previously at Google, the way that he described is that we absolutely have to look at our phones and our mobile devices when these come up. And even if this doesn't really apply to you, I'm sure that you're probably aware of a lot of these things here, what are called information or digital ailments. So things like, for example, at the bottom left, backlog depression, that feeling we get of depression, or maybe minor depression, when we can never ever get to inbox zero. Or, for example, news goggles, when the quality of news, when news basically is shared on a voting system, so the more hyperbolic, the more emotionally driving a piece of news is, that's basically depends on the extent to which we see that piece of news. And then, of course, there are all of these other sections just here. But the main thing is that we have a problem. Within our digital environments, we have a real problem. And this problem, as we can see here, just with this animation, is that, and again, this is of course the title of this entire conference, is that there's too much information. We're having real trouble discerning what exactly we should be focusing our attention on. And even then, not all of this is our fault, but then our digitized environments are being designed in such a way to carve up our attention, and it really is, we do really live in an attention economy. So I won't read all of these here, but you can see, for example, how a lot of digital professionals, how their whole professional reason for being is to capture our attention, not just of customers and audiences, but also of staff members as well. And that imperative, not only to capture attention, but to digitize as well. We're constantly in this drive, to this need to digitize. And very much, as you can see here, it's perceived as a matter of survival for companies. But in this constant environment of digitization, what we're finding is that people, instead of embracing digitization, that there's a growing move for people to move away from these digital tools. People are actively saying, I don't want my entire life to be digitized. I don't want to have my phone by my bed. I don't want to be connected 24/7. And this is where we can see are moving to. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this as the presentation goes on. But for example, the digital detox now. And we can see how, from a fringe activity, from something that might have been cool for hipsters a few years ago, the whole idea of conducting digital detoxes, these periods of time of being unplugged, are becoming increasingly popular. And this article just here shows the study study that was conducted by the UK government into media or digital habits of people. This was conducted last year, and it showed that 1/3 of UK respondents said that they actively seek time away from being digitised. And what's interesting is we're seeing now that the attitudes and behaviours towards being digitised is that we're moving away from efficiency. So what we saw initially was that we wanted greater efficiency. We wanted to do more and more and more, and that was why we wanted to be digitised. So we're moving away from that now, and now people we're finding want quality. We want quality out of our digitised experiences or from the lives we lead right now. We're finding that people want to be less distracted, and now people want to have more personalised, I call them more mindful experiences, and I'll explain the motivation behind that as we go on. But people are moving to desire these more personalised, quality-driven experiences. We're also finding now that people are asking deeper questions also of their digitised experiences. So again, people are not just blithely, they're not just mindlessly accepting all of these different tools that are being ushered into our lives, but actually asking richer questions of the people that provide these digital experiences or digitized experiences to us. So for example, we're asking, what can digital do for me, right? And what we're finding is that to provide a rich digital or digitized experience for people is that, and I can't see this here, but basically by helping people to understand, by having digitized experiences that really understand what people want to do and where people are right now. I call these mindful digitized experiences. These create intensely rich human experiences, and it's these that's coming through, that these are going to be the next generation of digital experiences. We're going to be moving beyond information overload to mindful digital experiences. We're finding that this future that we all hope will emerge are being driven by deep questions. For example, we're not asking digital now to connect us. We're asking, how can digital and social media, for example, how can I use that to understand myself better? How can I use digital or social to understand you better? How can I use it to increase empathy? How can I use digital to connect me or to connect us in a more meaningful way? Excuse me. And how can I also use digital to work better? I apologize, I'm really flying through this, but I'm really happy to answer any other questions you might have. But this is what I'm going to go through today. I mentioned before that I call these mindful digital experiences, or what I call digital mindfulness. The ability for our digitized experience, for the human and the digital to come together to transcend the noise, the information overload, by understanding really what it is that we want to do as human beings. That's digital mindfulness. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk about really the impact very quickly of constant connectivity. I'm going to talk about this amazing thing called digital blue zones. And finally, how we can humanize, as I call it, digital transformation. So digital mindfulness, very, very quickly. If you go to digitalmindfulness.net, I've been working, it's a research and content-driven platform. And what we really do is we try to understand how people connect online. So not just that people connect, we want to understand the how and the why behind digital connections. And what we've really found are that we can break all of this down into 4 different areas, which is really fascinating. If we try and understand, if you try and ask the big questions of what is the quality of our digital connection, where do these all fall into? We're finding now that these fall into 4 big buckets of digital transformation. So this whole idea of introducing new digital tools and digitized experiences into our daily lives. We're talking about digital wellness. So how can our digital tools impact the quality of the human experience? This whole thing about digital strategy. How can I use our digital tools to interact better, to better convince and connect with other people? And of course, with digital metrics. Again, these are huge topics that I would have spent a long time going through, but unfortunately, I don't have the time now. But what we're finding is that this whole idea behind digital mindfulness, or humanizing the rate at which we're transforming digitally, is that we're finding now that there really is a real economic or business case behind this. And this is really being driven by a new generation of thinkers and academics and professionals, people who really want to understand now what is the impact of constant connectivity, of information overload, and again, not just asking those questions, but then how can we transcend that? Each of these 4 books that you've got up, you see up there, these are by authors that I've interviewed, and they're absolutely amazing. But what's really interesting is that even though these 4 books in this entire universe exist, is that they all focus on one main thing that we need to focus on, and it's attention. We find that attention over and over and over again is the key to us being able to transcend, to use our digital tools, and for humanity to transcend the negative impacts of information overload. And so by asking these questions, asking these different authors, doing research myself over the past 4 years, it really leads me to ask, how connected are human beings, and you particularly? So if we look at this graphic very quickly, this gives a very quick overview into exactly how the impacts of information overload. And again, I won't spend too much time on this, but we can see that being connected all day, every day, and it's not just in our personal lives, but in our professional lives as well, where we're expected to be connected all the time. It really has adverse effects. Not just on our health and well-being, not just on our productivity, but ultimately on the company with regards to profits and loss, and those really huge KPIs that companies, CEOs, and shareholders go after. And so what I really want to come back to is that if this is the case, if we know that being connected all the time has such an effect on us, I've got here this little definition of corporate social responsibility, and I won't read it out now, but that led me to think about linking the two together. If we know that that digital has such an impact on us, does this not mean then that companies have a social responsibility to judiciously deploy technology, not only for employees, but for the way that they interact with their audiences or with their customers? This is something that I think that this link is not tenuous at all. I think this link is really quite strong. So we have here corporate social responsibility. What we're finding, again, and as I'm sure we all know, the whole reason why we constantly come back to email, we talk about information overload as if it's something that human beings are passively subject to. But actually what we're finding is that all of our tools, our applications, even the information itself is designed to be sticky. It's designed to rein in our attention. And then so surely, again, through all of the different applications that we're exposed to at work every single day, I know for my part, there are so many applications that we have to use. Is it not the case then that companies should be forced to think about corporate digital responsibility?